Well, it's the end of August, beginning of September, and the shift is about to happen. And what does that mean to you? The annual buck shift. It's very, very important to understand. And understanding it will not only help you if you own property and you want to build your habitat and do it correctly, but it also help you with scouting when you're on public land. Why are bucks in one location during the summer versus why they're at and where they're at during the fall? How does that affect how you hunt them? And I think a lot of people spend an entire season based on what they saw during the summer for mature bucks, what they built, how they attracted them during the summer, and they just beat their head against a wall every year wondering where those bucks are, why they're not getting them, blaming it on the food plot seed that they're planting, blaming it on the type of cutting they're making in the woods, when really it boils down to sometimes how they hunt, but a lot of times they just don't have the habitat that attracts mature bucks, and that's a very small percentage in the entire area. And that doesn't matter if it's on public land or private land. And public land is different, you just go find it. Private land, you have to make it. You're dealing with 70 acres, 150, 30, 200 acres. On public land, a lot of the areas that I've hunted are, the one area in Ohio is 60-some thousand acres. If you can't find them here, go there. There's always a place. They are out there. You can't say that on private land. You can't look at it and say, well, we have 100 acres. That mature buck is out there somewhere. No, he could be a mile or two away. Different on public land because they are out there in 60,000 acres somewhere. Kind of a cool playground because you look at it like, I'm going to go find him. I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to go find that buck. You can't do that on private land. You have to build it for them to come. You have to hunt smart or they're gone. So I want to talk about what is the shift. What I see, and I've consistently seen this from watching deer all summer long in the Thumb area. We used to go up there as a teenager. We'd sit in lawn chairs, watch a deer come out, get some beef jerky, some licorice, some pop, sit there with a bag of chips and watch them come out with cheap binoculars in the evening. It was awesome. I loved doing that. I was 17, 18, 19 years old. That was one of my favorite things to do. It was fun just getting up there, and then too, to be able to just sit in the evening, watch the sunset, and watch a bachelor group of bucks. Even though they're small, we were up there, we were watching mostly 1.5-year-olds, yearling bucks, and then we'd watch a few 2-year-olds, and if we were lucky, we saw a 3-year-old out of 20 bucks. Well, it was pretty cool to do. Then you watch where those deer go during the hunting season. We'd hear of them getting shot over here, shot over there. Why do they do that? You learn when you ask yourself why. You don't look at something and just take it for face value. You have to ask, even if you know this happens every single year, you don't learn anything by just knowing it and seeing it. You learn something by asking yourself, why did those bucks do that? Bucks have a hunting range. That's what I want you to hunt them in. And there's a big difference between a fall hunting range and a summer leisure range, summer range, warm season range, where they're just putting on weight and being lazy and laying around. Hunting range, they need thick cover. They need high stem count cover. They need hardwood regeneration, briars, shrub tips. That's what they live on from late October, November, December, January, February, March. They need that cover. They need that stem count. They need the stem count in thick brush so that they can have thermal protection from cold winds. They get out of the wind. Summertime, they want airflow. Mature bucks do. They want to protect their antlers. They can't just run them into trees. There's a pain associated with that. They can't rip their velvet. Plus, they're eating summer food. Completely different range. And because their range is several times greater than a doe, they're willing to go find it and travel. Does, on the other hand, need thick cover. They need thick cover for fawning cover. In fact, the highest stem count cover, grasses, briars, makes the best fawning cover because of scent dispersion. That fawn can bed in that thick cover and the scent disperses and breaks apart by all the grasses and high stem count. And predators can't find that fawn if they're out in the open hardwoods next to a log. I can think of some of the areas I hunt in Pennsylvania, big wilderness public land areas. That fawn is a sitting duck. There's no cover. There's no stem count. Predators can find them, so the predation rate is a lot higher in those areas. But that's exactly the type of area where a buck wants to be during the summer, not where does and fawns want to be. That's how you can create a doe factory, for example. You have very thick cover and great food during the summer. You're going to attract a lot of does and fawns. More does and fawns a lot of times than bucks, because if you have good thick cover that bucks want during the fall, they don't want to be there during the summer. So you attract a whole bunch of does and fawns. Hunting range, though, you're looking for thick cover, fall food, winter food, which is completely the opposite of what they want in their summer range. Now I want you to look at this. What we find is from the summer range to the hunting range, It's average of about a mile, mile and a half from where they live in the summer. There's always exceptions to the rule. When you have a property that's surrounded by ag land for miles in every direction, there's hardly any cover. Well, all the deer in the neighborhood, big neighborhood, are probably sandwiched into that 40 acres of cover you have. They have no choice. Where they have choice, so they spread out. And it's very few areas that are like that where they don't have a choice. Big wilderness areas, what you may find is that because you have great food in a big wooded wilderness area, then you might have all the deer in the area on your property during the summer, but there's a lot of bucks and middle-aged and older bucks that don't want to put up with a huge number of does during the summertime. So, and deer in general. So they go off and find their little swamp hole somewhere, big hardwood knoll they can bed in all day. They have a little bit of browse and food, and they just live out in the wilderness area. I know in Saskatchewan, we found it up there. Jen and I went hunting up there last year. Those deer, that they're waiting for them to come out of the northern woods down to the field areas. So if it's not cold, those deer are not pushed out of the woods to come down to where they can find more food and shelter out of the big woods. So in the early season, if it's not cold, you don't see a lot of bucks up there because they're still in their haunts. They're not down with all the other deer where there's a lot of deer numbers, but they haven't left the range because they don't want to associate with that. That's wilderness area. But bottom line is, they, in most areas around here, most areas, they're moving, and this isn't just a Midwest thing. This is a countrywide thing. But they're moving about a mile, mile and a half, could be more, could be less, from their summer range to their fall range. They do that because of habitat needs, thicker cover, fall food instead of summer food. The summer food's gone. Think about that last cutting of hay in September. There's not much food left. They really start moving early September to late September would be that peak, that really good wheelhouse time. But they're moving there. They're moving for food cover. And then at the same time, it's when hunters are getting in the woods. Dylan talked about earlier on a video today, you know, a point he made up with our September deer chores is to stay out of the woods in September. Let things settle down, because a lot of your neighbors aren't. They're gearing up for the rut. They're working on their property in early October thinking, well, the rut's 3 weeks away. Still got time. They're working on the property at the end of October because gun season is middle of November. We still have time. Be the property that isn't doing that, and you can start to collect deer. Because deer not only leave for habitat, they leave, of course, for hunting pressure too. This is what I look at. Let's say there's 6 bucks. They're right here in the center area, right here. What you find during the summer is a batch or group of bucks are back in some corner of the field almost every single night, predictably. You can depend on it until you go into the woods, start putting tree stands up. Then they might leave for a while. They might be back 3 or 4 weeks later, 2 weeks later, even a week later. That's why someone else in area number 1 that receives one of those bucks all of a sudden gets a glimpse of a big buck. Hopefully you're that kind of property. But we see here, this is kind of on average. You might see 6 bucks in an area. Well, number 2 buck, he lives a quarter of a mile away, so he's pretty cool. So number 6, he just stays there. Number 1, he went 1.5 miles away. Number 5 buck went 1.25 miles away. That's what they like to do. They space out. They find their own areas, each a little different, find some good buck habitat. Maybe these are representative of a lot of hunting properties where people have food plots, good habitat. But you have hunting range, summer range, they change. They have a rut range. And what I see with that is you'll have number 1, he might come back and he might include this as more of a barbell pattern where he's around here, but then he's majority of his time is here. 80% here during the rut, maybe 20% down here. And that could be the same for a lot of those bucks. So sometimes you see him come back there during the rut, but I don't want you to have just a rut parcel. I want you to be this one right here. So how to hunt the shift? I'll give you a couple examples. A core buck. Let's say you're hunting this number 4 buck up here. He's a half mile from his summer range. That's where number 4 lives. He's there for the majority of the time during the fall until he runs out of food, cover, or safe space. So if you spook him, he's gone. If he runs out of food, he's gone. Quality food, he's gone. If you spook his cover out, he's gone. If the cover's not thick enough and last so that he wants to be in that cover and have good regen in November, December, January, February, March, he's gone. So that's why a lot of deer move somewhere else in January, February, because it's just getting so cold up north that they need, and they have other requirements, so they leave ultimately. But bottom line is, you have a core buck, number 5 buck, 4 buck, 1 buck, 2 buck, that stay in those areas a large percent of the time, again, until they run out of food. Those are the bucks that if he's there in early October, go in and try to hunt him. If he shifts, all of a sudden you see him and he's hanging around, go hunt him then. Don't wait for the rut. Because the rut, he might be back to a summer range. He might be somewhere else. Yeah, he might be in there the majority of the time, but it's almost more dependable hunting him before the rut than after the rut. Don't be the guy that has to rely on the rut to have a good hunt. You don't want to be that type of hunter. That's a core buck. The time to hunt him is now, when you see him. A non-core buck is, unfortunately, you're in a rut property, meaning you need to rely on the rut to see bucks. Like number 6, yeah, he might be around, but it's easy to spook because he doesn't have great cover. So you're waiting for number 1 to come back, number 5 to come back for those 2 days. That's a non-core buck. During that 10 days of peak rut, 12 days, 8 days, whatever it might be, you're waiting for him to come back. He might be 1.5 miles away, 3/4 mile away. He's not going to come when it's 85 degrees in central Indiana on November 9th. But on November 11th in central Indiana, when it's a high of 51 and you just had a major temperature change, that's a great time to expect that non-core buck to come back home for a brief period of time, home meaning his summer home, and get a shot at him. Very predictable non-core bucks. You seem like it's a needle in a haystack because they live 1 mile away, but not during the rut, because he's told you for a couple of years, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back when the weather's good. By the conditions we use on HuntCast, help create that with HuntWise. Check out the link in the description for that and you get a discount on that. But bottom line is, those are the conditions I see where he might be back out of a 10-day rut window, 12 days, he might be back for 2 days because those are the good weather days. Otherwise, he's staying at home. Why would he move 1 mile when the weather's not great? He's just coming over for a jaunt looking for a 3rd or 4th doe for the primary rut to breed. He already had 1 or 2 does in his own area. It's easy pickings. He's there, they're there. How to collect these? Do you want to be the property that collects 1 or collects them all? I want you to be greedy. Because if you're the property that collects them all and your neighbor 2 miles away is doing the same thing, and neighbor over here 1 mile, you start to all collect nice little pockets of quality herds where you have good age structures, good sex ratios, and you have that because you've been able to collect it. How do you collect it? You have fall cover, fall food, and you hunt it correctly. You don't apply pressure. You protect that core area that we're talking about. When you do that, you become this parcel right here. You become the unfair parcel in the neighborhood. I used to call it 5% club. I believe it's 3% or less. The more I see, the more landowners I go to. Been to close to 1,500 different parcels in 26 states for paying clients to look at the properties and design their hunt for them. You see a lot. Every property I go on, I learn. People say, when are you going to retire and stop going to properties and stop traveling? Probably when I'm dead. I like going to properties. Even if I can't walk, I can still go around on a side-by-side, which is actually sometimes more efficient than walking a parcel because you can see every aspect and go back and forth. Look at every aspect of the parcel. But bottom line is, I love looking at whitetail parcels. I love learning. This year I'm cutting my schedule down to 60, 65 clients, down from 85, 85 last couple of years. 100 and some the year before that, 125 the year before that. I'm cutting my schedule down because I want to stay home more, but I don't want to stop learning. It's crazy it's tough when Dylan and I are shooting a bunch of videos because I get a lot of video ideas when I'm with clients because of the questions the clients bring in. I think, well, that'd be a great video idea. So I have a running total here of hundreds of ideas. Gone back to 2014, I would say there's thousands of ideas. I keep bringing them. But when I'm home for 2 or 3 weeks and we're doing all the work we have around here, I don't have a lot of ideas that come up. So I need to go on client trips at least once a month so I can get ideas for videos and bring them to you guys. But the bottom line is, you can be that parcel. You can be the one that collects it. Habitat's one thing. You have to have fall habitat. You can't have summer habitat. You can't have summer food. There are very little of it. We use it works out to probably, I'd have to add it up in my head, 1/3 of an acre, 1/4 acre, 1/4 acre. We're right around 1.25 acres total of clover on our property out of 17.5 acres. And with food plots. That 1.25 acres is not enough to collect a bunch of does during the summer months and promote them and hold them on all fall. It's just too small. We have tons of alfalfa around here. Those are just pass-through plots for buck hunting during the fall. So if we had all clover, if we had all beans, if we had any beans, like 3 or 4 acres of beans, we wouldn't be able to do what we do and collect bucks because we'd attract too many does, too many fawns. They become traditional fawning grounds. They just keep coming back. You can't shoot enough to correct the problem. First way to lower, if you have too many deer on your property, the first step is to get rid of summer food, not trigger control. Trigger control is second. A lot of people find that if they have the appropriate habitat, get rid of their summer food, they don't actually have to shoot any does most years because they go somewhere else. Those does and fawns live somewhere else. They're exposed to hunters in those areas, and then you have a quality herd on yours. That's part of it. You know, good habitat. You have to have fall habitat. You have to have fall, winter food. But you have to hunt it correctly. You have to maintain that core. You have to maintain that 50% plus on your property. When it gets to 70, 80 acres, 100, it's more like 60 to 70% of your land that's contiguous. Could be 2 blocks. You have a house in the middle, road in the middle. The bottom line is it has to be 50 to 70% or more of your land has to be all deer all the time, so you keep your scent out, your sound out, and make sure the deer can't see you within that area. And when you combine that with good habitat, that's how you become a part of the 3% club. Very few hunters do that. That's why there's one parcel in the neighborhood like this, and there's many, many parcels that are like this right here. You don't want to be a number 6 parcel. A lot of parcels are like that, where yeah, you see them during the summer, but they're gone. What good is that? But you don't want to be one of these other outlying parcels either, where you just see 1 or 2 mature bucks here and there, and then once you start hunting, guess what? That's what happens. You have these bucks, number 4, 5, 2, 1, 3, they all go out to their own areas, and all of a sudden, hunters in number 4, 2, 1, 3 go in, might have great habitat. That's why they attracted a buck in the first place, and they spook them off. Where do they go? They go to this parcel right there, and that's the one I want you to be. So we can learn a lot about fall patterns. It's really cool to anticipate those. Again, there's no 100% rule, but this is pretty high, 80-90% rule that works. It works to collect bucks. It works on public land. That's why you find an unfair percentage of mature bucks in certain areas of public land. They're remote areas. They have good food. They might be adjacent to really high quality private lands where people don't leave those private lands to go to the public land to actually hunt. I've been on many of those properties. I go to many of those properties every single year. Every single year I go to properties like that, many of them. And I'm talking 10 plus usually every year, where it's adjacent to public land and no one hunts on that public land in many different states. You would be absolutely shocked. And of course, I won't tell you where they're at. But the bottom line is there's outstanding opportunity for you out there if you learn to anticipate the shift, why it's happening, build your property, build your hunt around it, whether it's on public or private land, understand why bucks leave and how you can collect them and how you can be a true 3%er when it comes not only to whitetail shift and collecting those bucks, but actually having them on your property during the sweet spot of October, November, and December. And if they leave after that, that's okay, because you've managed the shift and the attraction when it matters most during the heart of the hunting season. Now, I appreciate you guys watching the YouTube channel, but I don't know if everyone knows everything that we have to offer, whether it's on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, our website, or WHS Wildlife Blends, our seed company. Also Instagram you can check out. I'm very active on Instagram, putting strategies on there, photos of what we do every day. Much more active there than Facebook. But our seed, web classes, books, clients, articles. I have over 600 articles on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, everything whitetail strategy. Of course, we have hats on there, and then make sure to check us out on Instagram again. But lots of stuff to offer. We're always coming out with new things, and this isn't the end of it. We have more things coming soon. Make sure to check us out.